Hey y'all, Prairie Dad here. I want to talk to you today about one of my worst purchases ever. And that purchase was about 3 or so years ago when I bought a Keurig coffee maker for my wife and I. At the time, we were really drawn to the simplicity of it, the convenience, and what we thought would be really great coffee. And so, yeah, I got that coffee maker for us for Christmas one year, and I started using it with my wife. And we went through all these different pods, making coffee and tea and lemonade and hot chocolate. And we were so over the moon. We thought, wow, this is so easy. But very quickly, we started noticing several flaws with the design. One really irritating and disturbing reality of these single use coffee makers is all the plastic garbage they create. Every single one of those pods is used once and you throw it out. And so you have more crap in the landfill. Another really irritating aspect is the choices for how much coffee you get. You press this. You have these two buttons, one for 5 ounces, one for 8 ounces of coffee. But the truth is, they don't really seem to matter all that much in how much coffee you get. And let's say you have a big mug, and you want one more ounce. Too bad. The water container on a Keurig too is also really irritating because you'll clearly have enough water to make 2 3 cups of coffee left in there, but because that little magnet thing in there has dropped down, it won't let you make any darn coffee until you add more water. It it's just treats you like you're stupid and you need to be nannied. Um, we tried several ways to try and make this a more easy machine to deal with. We stopped using the plastic pods because of the expense and because of the waste. We started looking for pods that were like a paper mesh with a tiny bit of plastic that wasted less material, and those were okay. We found a few different aftermarket pods that let you refill them time and time again, and those were great. They're just a real pain in the butt. Here's the one Keurig makes, and it's the least bad of all the options out there. You've got your outer container and this little mesh basket, and you fill that with coffee. But you know what? Cleaning this thing out is a pain. And let's say you have 4 or 5 people want coffee that morning. Then you've got to run that thing 4 or 5 times. Each time you have to pluck this thing out while it's still really hot from the water, clean it out, reuse it's absurd. It's really absurd. But we kept doing that for about 3 years because we'd sunk so much money into this coffee maker and because we believed it was superior. Until finally, when we had some guests over, we reached our breaking point with the Keurig. And we tossed it in the basement in case we needed it again. And we went out and got a Mr. Coffee. One that cost, like, the Keurig cost well over $100. This Mr. Coffee thing was 30 bucks. And there's some great things it does that the Keurig doesn't. The Keurig doesn't have a timer on it. The Keurig has to be babysat every time you want to use it. Whereas our Mr. Coffee, the night before, we hit this little thing that sets a timer on it. We put the water and grounds in, and then we come down the next morning. There is a full pot of coffee for us to just pour and drink without having to, when we're sleepy and exhausted, we don't have to think about it. We don't have to work at it. We just pour coffee as people should be allowed to do. And there's also just the less waste. We use some grounds and a little biodegradable paper filter with every single batch. There's no plastic wasted every single time. And there's one more thing we get to avoid thanks to our leaving the Keurig universe. With their second generation of coffee makers, Green Mountain Coffee, the company behind Keurig, created this sort of digital rights management software for coffee, which is absurd. What it did is it took all those little pods and printed a code on them. And all these new coffee makers would not work with a pod that doesn't have their code. So you are forced to pay for their extra pricey pods. I should add that Keurig did ultimately, backpedal on that whole DRM for coffee situation. But at the time we were making our coffee maker purchase, it was still in place. We're going to stick with our simple, less trendy Mr. Coffee from now on, and I urge you to do the same. Get your own basic coffee maker. It's better coffee, it's more convenient, and it's less wasteful. And when you're a parent, anything that gives you good caffeine as much as you want, darn handy. That's all, folks.